Sebastian turned to me today and he said, make video. Because we did this the other day during lunch, so he wants to do it again. So here's my video today. We are going to talk about why you should mulch your garden. Just do it. Just mulch your garden. This is going to be a video in 3 parts. Part 1 is why you should mulch your garden. Part 2 is why it's so important to mulch your garden. And then part 3 is just begging you to just freaking mulch your garden. Where in nature do you ever see bare earth? If you walk into the woods, you see ground that's covered in leaf litter and sticks and logs, sometimes like inches thick of these things. Moss. If you walk into a field, it's covered in flowering plants, even weeds, in grasses, whatever. Even if you are driving on a driveway and there's this tiniest little crack in the driveway, what pops in is weeds.
I just play with my toys.
You like playing with your toys, and I like mulching my garden. Why does Mother Earth do this? It's because bare earth is dead earth. There is no hope, there's no chance for microbial life to survive and to live and to thrive in bare earth. It's like making a place for a human without a house. If you don't have shelter, if you don't have water, if you don't have food, there's not going to be any human life there. The same with bare earth. Mulch, leaf litter, straw, wood chips, whatever it is, acts as a house to protect the soil, to protect microbial life. Soil that is not covered by something, either living material like plants, dead material like mulch, soil that's bare and not covered, is frequently washed away downstream. It's lost forever. It flows down the creeks and then the rivers and out into the ocean. We have lost a significant amount of our topsoil over the last 200 years of the industrial agricultural revolution. When you plow your soil and then you just leave it bare all winter long, you leave it bare and uncovered even when plants are growing in the summer. As every time it rains, topsoil gets washed away. When you're looking at soil for growing, there's topsoil and then there's subsoil beneath that. The topsoil is where all of the life is. The subsoil, there's a lot of nutrients, kind of, like calcium and stuff, but it's hard to access and there's not as much life there. Most places that I drive around and I see here in Lancaster County, most farms, you drive around and you just see the red clay subsoil. They've lost all of the topsoil. That's why a lot of modern agriculture revolves around spraying fields and putting in fertilizers for fields because the fields aren't fertile on their own. So Mother Nature works really hard to take care of this problem on her own. And one of her best solutions for this problem is what we like to call weeds. Weeds pop up and grow where? In bare soil and bare earth. In driveways, in your garden bed, wherever there's bare soil, weeds pop up and grow. These are plants that have evolved to grow in practically any condition, just like soil that is completely devoid of nutrients, super hot, super dry. They will thrive there, and they actually don't grow well in more shady conditions with more nutrient-dense soils. So weeds have evolved and developed to create millions of seeds, spread them far and wide, and grow in the worst possible conditions. This is Mother Nature's way of getting the mulch started. As these weeds grow, they kind of cover the soil, they shade the soil a little bit, they die back, they mulch the soil, and after a couple of years, they slowly start to build enough life into the soil that other plants can make their way in, and you start to have fields. And then as those plants develop, you start to develop more into forests. There's this rotating cycle in nature where you have forests that burn down, and then you have weeds come in to immediately start to bring life back into the soil. Then you have fields come in, pastures or meadows, and then you have forests again. There's this cycle and there's this rebirth. And when we garden, we are going out of our way to enforce this full cycle to stop and stay at the level that's devoid of the most amount of life. A lot of our garden vegetables are these first responders, are these ones that break in to the soil and won't really grow well in more shaded, like woodland environments. So here's a couple things we can do. One, keep growing veggies. They're awesome. I love tomatoes. Sebastian, do you like tomatoes? Yeah, he does. They're covered on his face. Keep growing your veggies, keep growing your tomatoes, but just treat the soil with more love and care. Mulch it really heavy. Another grilled cheese? That sounds so yummy. Let me finish and then I'll make one for you. Okay, you can eat your apples. Mulch your soil heavily around your tomato plants so that way the soil isn't washed down, so that way you create a house for microbial life to thrive. Your tomato plants will thank you eternally. You're starting to build up that topsoil as opposed to watching it wash away. Also, what you can do is slowly start to shift your gardening mindset into a more of a permanent agricultural or permaculture mindset. The idea here is you're shifting your mindset so you're not just growing things in that earliest stage, but you're now growing them in that mid-succession stage or even a little bit towards that later stage. So you're growing things in pastures and meadows or even into the end of like young forests. So this means if you're planting trees and you're planting shrubs and you're planting bushes, you start to hold on to more life and build more life year after year. If you are only growing vegetables, you're constantly starting afresh every year as opposed to more established plants. So I focus a lot of my growing on permanent agriculture. How can I shift to that later successional stage where things kind of want to be anyway? You deal with way less weeds because things are shaded, the ground is more nutrient dense. You are so silly. Planting more trees, planting more bushes, all of those things, or even just planting perennial vegetables, that can be really helpful too. Asparagus, ramps, and then you can even think about ways that you can grow in deep shaded conditions. If you have a shady, foresty, even a tiny little forest area, you can think about what can I grow here in the shaded condition without having to clear cut everything. Ramps, ginseng, other really important medicinal woodland things. Mushrooms grow really great in full shade conditions. There's a lot of understory fruit trees that do really well. Pawpaws, even apples. They won't be producing as heavily, but if they have some shade, they'll do just fine. They'll do really well. Elderberry, things like that. So shift your mindset some into thinking about later stage growing. And even when you're growing in those earliest stages, you're growing your tomatoes, you're growing your cabbage, you're growing your broccoli, think about mulching your soil really heavily to protect the soil, to protect the microbial life, and to build up that topsoil. As your mulch breaks down and compost, you're adding layers of topsoil. When colonizers came to the New World, the topsoil in North America was like you could shove your arm in as deep as you could go and you were still in topsoil. Native Americans did a really good job maintaining and caring for their soil and going out of their way to build up the soil and maintain it intentionally and using a lot of later stage growing in the work that they did. You hear a lot about corn, you hear a lot about squash and beans, those were important, but they also relied a lot on staple crops of permanent, perennial trees and shrubs and blueberry bushes and pawpaw trees and hickory trees, things like that. So think about later stages, think about mulching really heavily, think about building your topsoil.